I've received a couple of questions, not a couple, maybe half a dozen or so over the last little while that sort of go along this line. Uh, I know the reading, I've read it, I've watched the videos, but when I go to solve the problems, I'm not doing too well. I can't. I read them and they sound confusing, or I've been scoring myself on different exams, and I'm only scoring between 50 and 60%. Yet I know the reading. I've read it. Well, the problem is you're still learning. There are two parts to learning. There is the rote learning, which is just knowing what, and then there is the declarative learning, which is knowing how. And moving, and there's this belief that, well, I know what, I should know how. But no, those are two, in your brain, those are two very different functions. Well, I shouldn't say very different functions, but they're different functions and they require different parts of the brain, believe it or not. So I'm going to lay out a nice approach for you to follow, so that you don't feel that all this work and I'm not getting anywhere. Number one, before you approach any problems, a good review. A good 15-20 minute review is great. I've put up all the review videos for the five big sections. Five of them I didn't, but five big sections are up. The review part of it is really only the first 15 or 20 minutes of the video. The rest are all questions that I solve. I go really slow through them and I solve them, but you only need to watch the first 15 or 20 minutes of the video. The review is going to help you tremendously on your performance, and I know this because I've done this in class where I had a quiz and the quiz happens right away. Or what I'll do is I'll do a quick review of everything for 15 minutes, then I give the quiz. When I do that, the grades bump up dramatically. So watch the review. It brings into your short-term memory all of the stuff that you know what, and now it also starts to create some of these things, these ideas and relationships. Rote memory is knowing what? It deals with words, but it doesn't deal with ideas and relationships between all of the concepts. Only declarative memory does. By actually doing problems do you start to connect the dots and see relationships. But make no mistake here, you're not in test mode yet. You're still learning when you're doing those problems. So here's an approach to doing the problems. Number one, recognize that I am still learning when I'm doing these problems. I am in no position to test myself. I'm still learning. Great. Your first pass of questions, you're still learning. There's no race. You don't have to simulate a true exam. You don't have to simulate 90 seconds per question. There's no race. So here's what you do. Slow down. You don't have to answer that question right. You read it, and if you don't quite understand it right away, read it again and ask yourself, try to pick out one thing. The one thing you're trying to pick out is, what is this question asking me to do? Get it straight what it's asking you to do. Is it asking you to solve a particular variable? What is the variance? What is the standard deviation? What is the return? What is it asking me to do? Once you have that, again, not a race, slow down. What do I need to solve that? Without looking at the question, don't, because I'll tell you what, the question is going to throw a lot of stuff at you. Some of it you don't need. Some of it is going to be in parts, and to solve the question, you're going to need the sum of the parts. The next step is, once you know what you're being asked, the next step is, what do I need to solve it? What are my inputs? What are my variables? Then go looking for them. If there's a missing one, you take that variable out and you do it recursively. I'm being asked this variable. What do I need to solve this variable? You identify those things, you go looking for those. It's not a race. Your first pass at questions, you are still learning. It is a different part of the brain that's firing when you're working on declarative memory versus rote memory. Listen, I can give anybody a page from a very advanced medical textbook, and most people can remember it. But then if I give them a test which requires them to connect dots or form relationships with what they've just memorized, they're not going to do it because it's a different type of learning. You're still learning. So approach it that way. Now, I'm going to show you how to use mock exams the way they're supposed to be used to build up your score. Okay, now to follow this strategy, yes, you're going to need some mock exams and quite a few of them. But I've put 6 mock exams up on FinQuiz. They're not mine. I made a deal for you. I got them at a reduced price for you. There are 6 mock exams up on my Cells site that you can get. They're $60. You'll get 6 mock exams, which means you're paying about $10 per mock exam. But there are 12, if there's 6 full exams, there are 12 half exams, which means you're basically paying about $5 for a half exam. Here's what you do, and here's how you use these mock exams. You're not testing yourself each time. What you're doing is you're running a mile in 10 minutes. Then the second time you're going to run that mile in 9.5 minutes. Then you're going to run it in 9 minutes. You don't set out to run a 4-minute mile your first time every single time. You build into it. So here's how you use the mock exam. Take the first one and give yourself 3 minutes per question. On the real exam, you have 90 seconds per question. You're going to give yourself 3 minutes per question. You're going to read it slowly. You're going to figure out, what am I being asked? What are the variables that I need? You're going to think it through. You're not going to make any sloppy mistakes like reading it the wrong way because you're trying to rush through it. You're going to take 3 minutes per question, and you're going to try to score over 70%. Now you may say, well, great, I got 80%, but it took me twice as long to do it as the real exam. That's fine. Your second exam, you give yourself 2 minutes, 45 seconds per question. You try to match your score. Third exam, you now drop it to 2 minutes and 30 seconds. You try to match your score. And you keep every exam you get to, 4th one, 5th one, 6th one, you drop your time by 15 seconds each time until, when you're ready to write exam 7, you're writing it in 1 minute and 30 seconds per question. That's 90 seconds per question, and you'll do that for exams 7, 8, and 9. Remember, you have 12 half exams now. And then the last 3, you're going to drop yourself all the way down to 1 minute and 15 seconds, and again, try to match your score. So if you take all the time in the world, you should do pretty good. Then cut it back 15 seconds, then 15 seconds, then 15 seconds. But don't take the first mock exam and say, here I go, I'm going to run a 4-minute mile. And I have 12 half exams, so I'm going to run 12 4-minute miles. Don't do it that way. Nobody trains that way. Your brain, you're not going to train your brain that way. Think about how you train your muscle. So do it that way. 3 minutes per question. That gives you lots of time and slow down. Because here's what I think you're finding. And you can nod yes, or you can just shake your head and say no at this. But I think most of you will be nodding yes. When you do these exams, when you do these self-tests and you find you're only scoring 60%, you're going, oh, okay, well, let me review. What did I get wrong? And you read one of the questions and you look at the answer and you look at what you did. You go, oh, coupon, not interest. I read that wrong, or I read this word wrong. Oh, and a lot of times you simply just read it wrong, or you thought it said one thing when it was really saying another, or you thought it was asking you for standard deviation. You calculated variance. You saw the answer A, B, and C. You saw one of the answers as variance, and you circled it without realizing that I need to get to standard deviation. You made stupid mistakes of not reading. Slow down. Take your time. See what you can score by taking all the time you need. Then your next one, you cut that back. Because you've got 120 practice questions in your brain now that your brain has worked on. You're starting to know how. The next one, you'll know how even more. The next one, you'll know how even more until you're doing them in 1 minute and 15 seconds. Now, yes, you're going to need mock exams for this, but again, take advantage of what I've done for you. They're up. Fortunately, they come down on Friday. Today is Wednesday. March 15th. They come down on the 17th. Nothing I can do about that. They're not mine. They come down on the 17th. So if you want them, you got to get them. You're going to be paying $5 for each half exam. Each half exam has 120 questions. 120 questions over 10 topics. And you're going to follow this strategy when you're ready to do it. This is where you test yourself. All the other questions at the end of the chapter, you're still learning. Don't go from, I know the chapter, let me test myself. You'll only disappoint yourself because you know what, but you don't know how yet. well, maybe you know how for some of them, but you don't know how for most of them. But again, it's a different part of the brain involved in knowing how versus knowing what. So you got to give your brain a chance to grow those neurons and make those connections. All right. I hope that helps.